All right, it's time for another story. But first, I want to say I appreciate the feedback and all the views. I was told too that I guess I need to ask people to subscribe. I'm new to this, so the audio stuff, I hope that I've worked that out. But I'm only down here for a few days from work, and it's I don't even drive around anymore. I stay home, so I really wanted to aim at getting this together and get it out there so people have an idea of a little bit more that's going on behind the scenes, rather, not that it's not important, but the, zoning and different stuff that's going on, people doing their construction without permits or not the right permits, and the pollution in the bay. I believe all that's important. The overcrowding at the beach, the privatizing of the beach, everything. But I believe this is maybe a part of the community, the demographic, that's not really getting a lot of attention. And from my experiences, I can understand why. It's a scary situation to be in. Your law enforcement is not supposed to be the people that terrorize, torment, harass, maliciously prosecute, falsely charge, physically attack, threaten with sexual violence, and so on and so forth. But this is the regime of Atkinson's Walton County. So, the last one about the last video about David Nelson, Deputy David Nelson with the jail there. I touched on a lot of stuff that happened, but I didn't go into every little detail. But he is a sick individual, very, very troubled person, and I hate to see him in the position that he's in. And if you know about my history, I've been incarcerated in a third world country. I've been tortured, and I've been beat. I've had things happen to me. I never spoke out about it. It's just I didn't want to jeopardize the mission where I was, and I thought, supply chain and food for hungry people and medical supplies and definitive care in a third world country was more important than demonizing the people that really took place, and it took part in what took place with me there. But anyway, that said, I give more respect to the people that did to me there what they did than I do to David Nelson. His approach was cowardly, disgusting, and just demented, sick person. So that said, right now we're going to talk about James Pitman. He's Lieutenant James Pitman of the Walton County Sheriff's Department. Lieutenant Pitman patrols the northern area of Walton County and handles patrol. So I live in the northern district. I'm actually out at the park behind my house right now, which comes down Gene Hurley and runs into Locklear roads, which, if you remember, Lieutenant Locklear was a lot of the onset of the what took place that day. I think we all know it comes from Michael Atkinson and further up the ladder. But nonetheless, she lives right over here, which backs my family's property and where I call home. Just the other side, the one way out. I actually took a trail to get here, so the one way out that I explained, where I have to go past the city detective, is the other side of the road. But so here we go. Lieutenant James Pitman, patrol lieutenant for the Northern District. I used to go to school a few grades behind him. He graduated ahead of us. I was friends with his stepbrother. Never had an issue with James Pitman. When all of my issues started with Walton County and the custody disputes and things that went on with that and the harassment that came along with it started taking place, I thought I could reach out to James Pitman, being as I had somewhat of a relationship with him, and talk to him about what was going on, thinking it might help and possibly get some at least some good advice or where to move, and hopefully the harassment slow down if their lieutenant found out about it. Well, a couple years later, I end up finding out that one of my family members had been in a friendship relationship with Mr. Pitman's now ex-wife. And during that time, Mr. Pitman had, I was overseas. I believe I was in West Africa. But no matter, I wasn't home during this time, but I found out when I returned home what had taken place. But when I spoke with James, he told me a completely different story. You know, he drove up to the house and found out that his wife was over there. This is on the property right over here. And, you know, went up and knocked on the door and talked to him. Well, a little bit later, I end up hearing a completely different story from the actual victims. And when I heard this story, you know, I'm gonna, you know, add in some of the text and so on that I received about this. And it's scary because this person was actually married to the lieutenant, and he was tracking her via GPS of some sort with her phone, I'm assuming, the way the messages went. And with that, he followed her over to our property, my family's property, where he commenced to banging on the house and the doors. And when she opened the door, he proceeded into the home and chased my family member all the way into the back, what I understand, into a closet where he hid. James was in uniform, he was in his cruiser, he had his badge on, and he was toting his gun. He came through the house in a rage, absolutely unhinged and out of control. If you've ever seen Sergeant Hoke in action, you probably, you know, it's a pattern of behavior with all of them. So as this story was unfolding to me, it started to bring reality to situations that I haven't spoke about on here, but like multiple break-ins to my property that were, you know, absolutely never investigated. But when you start to look even deeper into it, I'm not one to call the sheriff's department for anything, but in any situation where I did, absolutely every single case is left open, you know, unfounded. All of these things. They sat there with evidence in the office at the jail for over a year before I finally went and picked it up, because it was souvenirs that had came back with me from overseas. So I went back to retrieve them, and when I did, you know, you tend to find out more when these guys start talking to you in person and just letting the cat out of the bag about things. But that's what happened, and some of that we might get into in later videos, but I want to move on with this. So James committed a home invasion well in uniform under the cover of law, and this was relayed to Michael Atkinson, and I'm, if I understand correctly, internal affairs, but no action was taken, not administrative, not criminal charges. The DA didn't prosecute, even look into it, from what I understand. I don't believe it went past Michael Atkinson. But there's documentation, there's witnesses, there, you know, victims, and so on and so forth of this. But for a long time, I believed that this played a role in my treatment throughout, you know, the county as a whole, but mostly right here at home and into the courthouse with my custody case and the, you know, malicious alienation by Walton County of my children. So I end up looking into it a little bit more, and when the situation from the previous video happened with David Nelson, people started reaching out to me, and they told me things that David Nelson had spoke about, you know, well, I don't know if he had had a couple drinks, a lot of drinks, or whatever, but he was real loose of the tongue. And he spoke of using my grandmother's name, saying that the harassment was directed by James Pitman at my grandmother's property as an attack on me because of the relationship. Sorry. Using my grandmother's name, he said that the attacks at the property on me and the harassment of my grandmother were directed at her because of me, and ultimately because of the relationship between his ex-wife, his now ex-wife, which is married to my family member, and my understanding was that he couldn't really go after them because of the custody situation, family stuff and things of that sort. But when one of the victims talked to me or wrote to me, they expressed that they had no idea what they could possibly do, because nothing would happen to him, as if he was untouchable. And again, I'll share some of the context of those texts throughout here. But ultimately, David Nelson started talking about it, and people reached out to me. Some of them, not exactly aware of the custody situation, but completely upset about the attacks on, now 89-year-old woman that has, multiple health issues at her age, but is more than able to live at home. But things like Sergeant Hutto agreeing to meet me at the jail to help the jailers understand that there was a warrant for me, and allow me to surrender myself, but instead surrounded my grandmother's home at 1:30 in the morning. Using the front yard as a derby track on Christmas Eve. Instead of spending Christmas Eve as a family at the table with our grandmother, we sat there with the sergeant, which I'll add in here again, and listened to his line of BS, only to have him walk out and underneath another security camera on my grandmother's handicap ramp, likely talking to his superior, being James Pitman, saying, no, he's got us video, photos, and all over the yard. He spoke of this right up underneath another camera. And I sat there at the table, never left the spot where the recording, the photo that you'll see of him was taking place. And I sat there and just switched over to the security cameras and listened to all of his side of the conversation. But nonetheless, nothing came out of that. And lo and behold, I find out his name is, involved in the malicious investigation and prosecution of me on those charges that they ultimately dropped, a misdemeanor at 14 months and 3 weeks. But I say all this to say this. James Pitman is the patrol lieutenant for the North End, the patrol lieutenant, and he completely has the wherewithal and knowledge of this happening, and he's either involved in it, complacent with it, or both. But as the patrol lieutenant, you don't sit by and let this go. But now we know. David Nelson is loose-lipped, and he's been talking to multiple people and gave different versions of what took place, but it's all on video. And ultimately, James Pitman had absolutely no action taken against him. And if you watch the sheriff's Bookface Live, you'll see James Pitman typically trolls that and puts a positive spin on just about any question that he's got the bandwidth to answer. And I believe he does this because he's got a active train wreck of a career, a train wreck of a personal life. You can't, he's unhinged with a badge. And I think that the sheriff has got him under his wing so far by protecting him, that some of the things he has to do is, go on Bookface Live and put a positive spin on everything. But he's just another one of his Gestapos, and following right behind his coattails. But there's a little bit of that story. Like I said, I'll add in some of the stuff there, but it's a shame to see the victim being a family member of one of these deputies that is so scared to speak up or do anything, because she knows that there will be absolutely no action taken against him, and God knows what took place before they separated in order for her to finally move on and get away. But another sick individual, he's stalked, he committed a home invasion, he's done it all under the cover of law. And that's just what he's done to other people. If we got a hold of everything and followed it up, who knows how many people he's affected in the county. And I've heard stories. It's terrible. But I'm going to try to get this content out there because it needs to get out there. Michael Atkinson is the head of the snake. He knows exactly what's going on with his people. If you recall from the first video, that little brief clip from his Facebook Live after my release, I would encourage anybody to try to figure out who else he would be talking about that had a lawsuit on him.
We think is off the chart. The problem is I can't go advertising that to you because I'll get sued out of my mind because he technically has not done anything yet.
Look at the timeline between the federal case getting my motion was granted for an extension, and then shortly after, Michael Atkinson issued an arrest warrant on me. He, served me with a 24-and-a-half-year-old restraining order that on one paper in the document said that I was present. On another document, I wasn't. Well, I wasn't present. I didn't know it took place. I was never served it. 24 and a half years later, they held me hours after my bail was made, on this criminal charge that had nothing to do with this restraining order, served it to me just to create a rift in the family. This just is the trickle down from Michael Atkinson. The regime, starts and ends with him. Getting him out gets Clay out. Getting Michael out, for lack of better terms, clear out the swamp. And that's what needs to happen in Walton County. I don't believe constitutional and civil rights have ever been a practice here. And it's about time that we bring people that would, really push that and force the Walton County Sheriff's Department and even the Defuniak Springs City Police to, follow those and allow people to feel comfortable with the law enforcement in their area and know that these aren't people that are going to sexually assault and sodomize them. They're not people that are going to tear up their front yards because, they came after them, in a malicious manner and attempted to prosecute or even prosecuted. There's people here that, can't fight as long, don't have the finances or whatever. Not to say that I did. It was very hard to do. But getting in somebody like Aaron Murray, Alan Osborne, and some new commissioners in there, because the other thing is, none of this should be happening in any district throughout Walton County without our county commissioners being aware of it and taking action. So obviously the problem goes further, but getting Michael out and a few of those county commissioners is going to change the tides here for the citizens that have put up with that regime's torment and harassment. So I'm going to leave it at that, and I appreciate it. Thanks for listening, and again, any kind of constructive feedback would be great. Thank you.